Welcome to today's episode. I'm really lucky to be able to spend some time with just an all-round good egg. One of my best mates over the years. This is a man that has been on the road with me touring. We're in business together. We do a lot of stuff together, and most importantly, I have learnt a lot from this dude. And selfishly, I get to record all of the lessons for myself, and I figure whilst we're here, we might as well spread it out to the world. How are you feeling today, Jordan Spowart? How you doing?
I'm feeling very good. On the topic of the call, I've been to the gym, I've had a lovely healthy lunch, and I'm good to go. I'm all sharp and focused.
Good. And where in the world are you tuning in from today?
I'm currently in Bali, and in Bali a place called Uluwatu, and it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, you're kind of living your best life, living the life that we're all very envious of, globe trotting around the world. What's your favourite place so far?
I think probably here it's got a good mix of everything. There's a lot of hype around Bali, and we kind of avoided the places that are a bit overrun, crazy traffic and all of that. And this is spot on, like chill island vibes, ton of gyms, super healthy food, beautiful beaches, you've got surfing, the lot. So it's really nice.
Well, we're going to dive right in talking about health and wellness in general. My favourite thing about this conversation is that you're not selling anything. We've been good friends for a long time. We have had similar conversations about this topic over the years. Full disclosure, Jord has helped me personally when I've had a little bit of a struggle with kind of weight loss, health and wellness in general. And I have found that having someone without an ulterior motive who happens to be very invested for genuine reasons to learn and be passionate about this can be really helpful. So my first question to you, Jord, is going to be, why do you think you have found such a passion in understanding the mechanisms of the body and health and wellness as a general subject?
Okay, so I know that I was clearly uneducated, as most people are. You just get plopped into the world and then you go about your life. And around like being a teenager, I just used to love food, so I ate loads of food. And I got around to that age where I was kind of transitioning from doing like swimming 3 times a week and going football, training and games and rugby and all that kind of stuff, where it started to stop. And I wanted to replace it with going to the gym. And when I'd done that, I was kind of like, okay, I'm doing this to my body. It didn't really feel right to go and then have something bad. So that's kind of where it begun, where I'd start to learn, okay, I need to be getting in a certain amount of protein if I'm like breaking down these muscles. If I'm going to put the effort in and do this damage to the muscles, let's do the right thing. And it kind of started there. And I'll probably say, as a person, I value stuff progressing in my life. I enjoy the progress and seeing results. And I think as you start to get the gratification and the feel-good element of health and fitness, that's what really made me go deeper and deeper, start to optimize and look at different areas. So I'd probably say as a whole, that's a good start to how I started looking into it.
And it feels to me like that led to you having enough of an understanding that you could start to, let's say, pass out the difference in the arguments between influencers, for example. Mm-hmm. One of them that I'll ask you about is this key debate that seems to be going on forever about like the whole, is it calories in, calories out? Is there more to it? And that's something that I'd like to move on to. With all of your knowledge and all of your understanding so far, I can appreciate some of these questions are tricky. But where do you stand on whether, weight loss or health in general is just a calories in, calories out thing, or is there more to it?
Firstly, there is a lot to it, but fundamentally as a whole, it is calories in, calories out. You can't make a calorie out of nothing if you haven't consumed it, the same way that if you're running out of petrol in your car, you can't magic petrol in there. However, in the in and out process, there are a few different things, well, probably a lot of things that can go on which have an effect on that process, and you can change that as you recognize it. But as a whole, fundamentally, it's calories in, calories out.
Why do you think it is over-convoluted so much if it is as simple as calories in, calories out?
Because whenever there's money to be made from something, it doesn't serve profit to give someone the answer immediately, make it simple. It's, okay, there's this secret thing that you need to buy and you need to subscribe to it, and here's like level 2 to it, months to come, and it doesn't facilitate a lifestyle change that you're going to be comfortable implementing over the course of a lifetime. It's here's this thing, you feel really like excited, you get a lot of progress up front, and then it becomes, well, I'm not going to drink juice for the rest of my life, or I'm not going to only eat meat for the rest of my life, or whatever it is. There's 1,000,001 different diets out there, but anything that is selling you the dream, as with anything, is not going to be conducive to long-term results.
I always found it funny when I was getting bombarded with information. You remember the conversations we had years ago that we'll review in this podcast. But when I was trying to figure things out, and you just see every diet under the sun and every workout plan, my favourite thing was having someone at the gym explain to me the different types of protein. You've got like workout protein, then there's breakfast protein, then there's after workout protein, then there's like, before you go to sleep protein. I was like, is protein just protein, or are there...
Okay, so protein is protein. You're going to have different like makeups of it. So you've got ones that include all of the amino acids and ones that don't. That's why vegans have to have various different sources, because they need to complete the profile. Maybe what the guy who's talking to at the gym was alluding to was the release of the protein. So similar to how most people probably watching this understands that you put sugar in your body, boom, you've got the energy. Maybe if you have a potato or brown bread, it's going to release over longer periods of time. So with protein, you've got like protein isolate in the form of a protein shake. Maybe if you fasted all day and you're training in the afternoon, you probably want to get protein in your system as soon as possible. If you're a bodybuilder and your priority and goal is like muscle growth, maybe you want to consider having casein at nighttime, because it's very slow releasing protein. And so there is an element of truth to that, but if we're coming at this from the lens of the majority of people who want to be more healthy, they don't want to overcomplicate things, they don't want a whole pantry full of like 5 different protein shakes. I think all of that is that last 5% for the people really trying to squeeze out the results.
I mean, I don't want to put myself down, but at the time I definitely wasn't looking to optimize my like maximum muscle growth for a competition. You know what I mean? I was just trying to shed some pounds, and this is kind of my point in a way for most of us listening. Our relationship with our bodies is a personal and it's a private thing. Many people are very comfortable and confident however they look, and there's other people, and myself, I've been included in this, where you might start to not be that content with how you look, or realizing that like trends or tendencies in your life might be slipping a little bit. And this is part of my worry, and a great place to start with you, and especially with your knowledge base. Because, for most of us, we get bombarded with, why don't you have these 8 different types of protein? And it's like, no. You just want to initially start by getting things under control. And I want to explore with you the difference of different types of calories between, fats or carbohydrates and how they work. And for most of us listening, we don't have that basic education, right? We weren't necessarily taught it in school. So maybe we start with the basics. Where do you begin when you're advising people about the different food groups and how calories function, the difference between carbohydrates and fats? Like, where do you start if you're trying to build someone's fundamental knowledge for the path of losing weight, for example, and being healthy?
So the first thing I would probably do is, because you mentioned about school, and what is in the syllabus at school is the food pyramid, and I'd say forget all of that, because I believe that it pushes you to have carbs as like your main source of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with any macros, but where...
What do you mean by macros?
So protein, carbs, and fat. The way I would approach it is stick to as real foods as possible. So people sometimes, when they're talking about this, will say like eat clean and that kind of stuff. And the reason that I think that's more important than anything is because it makes you feel good. It's kind of what your body is meant to take in. I think when you're living off of processed foods, fast foods, and you're putting all this essentially poison into your body, I'd say from a standpoint, that's not a good place to start from, because if you want to feel in the mood, nice and sharp and focused to go for your run or go martial arts training, and your body's not running on the best possible fuel, I would say that's probably a problem in and of itself, because we're looking at augmenting someone's existing lifestyle to essentially make them feel better, make them feel healthy. And to answer your question, it's very difficult to kind of give you an elevator pitch, because it very much depends on the person's goal. So they could be, maybe they're super skinny and they want to put on a little bit of muscle, develop some strength. Maybe they're overweight and they have a big appetite, and they need to look at finding foods that are less calorie dense, that are going to fill them up. This is where I sit and I align, because I have a humongous appetite. So without not giving you an answer, that's my answer. It depends on the goals, but I would always start with whole foods.
And is that because your body fundamentally treats them differently? It seems to me like you're worried that we have a lot of synthesized foods essentially in our society at the moment. And
I'm not an expert or a scientist, but there's a ton of chemicals and ingredients in these foods which are put in there to maybe make them last a long amount of time, so that they can be shipped all the way around the world. And you just know when you have these sorts of food. Like if you have a KFC or whatever, it's great whilst you're eating it, and then you just feel after. When you have, I don't know, a wild salmon fillet and, I don't know, pan-fried, broccoli and healthy oils and a bunch of vegetables, you feel great. And when you make that consistent life change, you just feel healthier. You're having good sources of good foods, and then your body can do what it is capable of. Because I don't think people think about this, and I think about it quite often. It's everything that happens in our body in terms of regenerating our processes in our brain, the output that we do. It's all working from what we put in our bodies. So I think it's incredibly key to consider that. And I think a lot of people, and this is not from a judgmental standpoint, but unfortunately they're ignorant to what they're putting in their bodies. Probably a lot down to do with marketing. You go down the frozen aisle and you go and pick up a microwave meal, and it's got all of this stuff in it, and you're like, okay, just quick decision, that's good because it tells me it's good, and why would the company lie? So I'd probably just say whole foods, and then from that point moving forwards, it's what is your personal goal?
Have you ever seen the video of the pasta being digested against the pot noodle? Have you ever seen that?
It rings a bell, but I don't think so.
Well, to your point, I don't think, given the choice, companies would avoid monetizing ignorance. And I think you're spot on. And that's really, hopefully, what this podcast is about, right? It's just trying to do our little bit to try and get education from your brain the years that you've studied this out into the open in a simplified way. But one thing that changed my life, genuinely, was a video of someone eating one of those camera pills. Have you seen? You can eat a little pill, and it's like a camera.
Yeah.
It's got a little light on, and it goes through your digestive tract, and it's really good medically for making diagnosis, but it's also quite handy to see how your body digests food. Mm-hmm. And I am someone, and again, people listening might align with this. If I eat pasta, like store-bought pasta, doesn't agree with me. Never really has done. But I can get away with it, right? I can eat spaghetti bolognese all day long. And I went to Italy one time and had actual like homemade pasta. Totally different experience, right? for my gut. Mm-hmm. And didn't really think much of it until I watched this video. And anyone can go find it. It's Italian homemade pasta, as in like literally made an hour ago and cooked and eaten, versus store-bought like dried emulsified pasta versus pot noodle. And the moral of the story was that in order for store-bought pasta to live on the shelves for so long, those ingredients don't just naturally stick together, right? Because they have to be like glued almost, chemically glued through emulsifiers. And I never understood this. But it makes sense. If you're going to have some beautiful raw ingredients that gets mashed up together and you're going to stick it on a shelf for a year before it gets sold, you're going to have to chemically glue this stuff and dry it out and all the rest of it. And obviously a pot noodle is like that times 10 with a bunch of like weird blue chemicals in it and like salts and whatever. Anyway, you watch the video side by side and the homemade pasta, which is almost like temporarily stuffed together flour and egg and some spinach or whatever, just falls apart. It goes in the gut, it falls apart, and you can tell that your gut wall is just instantly really just able to rip this thing apart really easily. Mm-hmm. Then the store-bought pasta is almost stuck together until really low in the digestive tract. And the pot noodle is basically like a blue gunk that just stays like worms pretty much right to the end. And I just thought, oh, God, like, yeah, we're not educated and we are ignorant. I mean, I'm, 36. I didn't realise this until like a year ago. And I've helped myself to pot noodles for years and had store-bought pasta for years. And again, like you say, there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel better knowing that that's my choice and there's a real impact in my decision. And then throwing it back to you about this difference between your body's absorption of different things. I remember you once telling me about how calories of different, what did you call them, like macros, proteins or fats, whatever, these fundamentally different calories are treated differently by your body. And this is another thing I didn't know, and I'd love it if you can kind of go through that whole difference again. Okay,
so when looking at the macros, protein and carbs, they have 4 calories, and fats, which probably most people don't know, has 9 calories, and this is per gram. So straight away, if you're having a high-fat diet, absolutely not demonising any eating style, by the way, but just like factually, if you are having a high-fat diet for the same size, you are consuming more calories. So if you're someone who cooks with a lot of oil, again, very healthy, if it's the right oils, you're going to be having more calories than, say, you didn't use that oil. For the exact same meal, you haven't even got any additional volume, really, because it's like a thin liquid that is coating everything. But you've got an extra 9 calories per gram in there. Now, when it comes to protein, there's something called the thermodynamic effect the thermodynamic effect. And essentially what this is your body goes through a process of breaking this down, and that process in and of itself uses energy. So again, people would probably say, oh yeah, this is why it's calories in, calories out. That's within the middle of calories in, calories out. It's a process which changes the output of this specific macro.
So if you take a gram fat and a gram of protein, even though they're the same weight, they have different calorific values.
Yes.
What did you say? Protein has 4 grams, protein has 4 calories per gram, fat has 9 calories per gram.
Yes. And carbs are the same as proteins in terms of 4 calories, but they don't have the same thermodynamic breakdown effect as protein does. So I think we was discussing this the other day, but a certain diet type, the carnivore diet, if you're consuming only protein, for the most part, you're going to get some fats and stuff in there from the animal. You're essentially losing between 20 and 30% of your entire daily calorie intake. So you might think you're getting X amount of calories and you're actually having much less. And from personal experience, this had an impact because it's quite a chunk of calories when you're thinking you're only consuming that. But for some people, when they get good advice to have more protein in their diets, it's more filling, you're going to be repairing all of the cells and stuff in your body, they might have a lack of energy, because if they're upping that to like such an extent, then they might actually end up having less calories than they think they're having, and then feeling low energy because of that.
So if I've understood that correctly, because I genuinely didn't know this, if I eat, so one more time, you said protein, if you eat like 100 calories of protein, there's what, like 20 to 30 of those calories get burnt just so your body can process the protein.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I eat 1,000 calories of protein in my diet. I've actually only sort of got the ability to use 700, 800-ish of those calories. Even though I've consumed 1,000, my body's actually only getting 800-ish, call it 800. I mean, I'm sure it's slightly different for different people.
And I know we'll probably go, sorry to cut in there, I know we'll probably go into maintenance and all of that kind of stuff, but just touching on what I was saying and how drastic this could be, when I was doing the carnivore diet, I was in a losing fat stage. So I was having more towards 2,000 calories, which on a normal diet, I'd be losing fat. You put on the thermodynamic effect, if I'm having 2,000 calories, then that's quite a chunk, and it's not healthy for someone of my size and weight, doing the amount of output I was doing. I was doing Muay Thai 3 times a week, training 4 times a week. I was doing running multiple times a week. So that's already a lot of calories off the top of what I was eating. And then you go and put that on there as well, that deficit of this thermodynamic effect. You're basically running off of fumes. So doing something like that, you might think, yeah, I'm being really healthy. I'm trying out this new diet that loads of people push as being really good, and I think it definitely has some benefits to it. I'm doing all of this exercise. I'm like well in excess of the recommended 150 minutes of exercise. Why do I feel so bad? Like, why am I so low energy? And it's little things like that had I known at the time, I would have accounted for. And then when I done it again in the future, I did account for it, and I had no problem. I didn't feel bad at all.
That's what this is about, is nuggets like that. I'm certain that not a lot of people are aware of that. Maybe I'm ignorant, I am ignorant to this stuff, but that seems like such a fundamental thing to know. And like you say, and I'm just trying to do the maths a bit here, it's like if 2,000 calories a day for you is already a calorie amount that you're losing weight on, yeah, if you are eating mostly or all protein, you're actually only able to use 1,500 to 1,600 and all the exercise on top. I'm surprised you wouldn't keel over and pass out. And maybe this is important to realize, that with some of these fads, with some of these diets that, like you say, are pushed, aren't they? They're glorified. Yeah, maybe they can be dangerous sometimes if you don't have that education to understand what's happening in your body. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a lot more than just kind of what you look like. Really, we obviously like want to look a certain way, and that's attractive to us because of like evolutionary reasons. But on a deeper level, you've got to think about driving the car, going to work. We do client calls and stuff all the time, and if you're not sharp and you maybe say the wrong thing or say it in the wrong way, you're undermining your own performance, and there could be other effects. So I think it's super important to think about your head as well as just what you look like. I feel like it's all important, but it's all a piece of the pie.
How did you know how many calories you were supposed to be eating? Like, how does that work? Like, I think this is to do with most of us trying to figure out, well, I wouldn't know whether I'd be losing or gaining weight if I ate 2,000 calories. How does that actually function?
So everyone is going to have a maintenance amount of calories for where they're currently at. If you're massively overweight, your calories to maintain that overweight state is going to be a lot higher. For example, if you're someone who is very skinny, doesn't do any exercise, your maintenance to maintain that is going to be on the other side of it. It's going to be relatively low. So based on your goal, whether you're looking to put weight on or lose weight, I would say the key is finding out what your maintenance calories is. If I have X, nothing changes. This is going to take maybe a couple of weeks of just actually trying to find this out, but it starts, go online, there's tons of these calorie calculators. They're not 100% accurate, but it's a good starting point if you're completely unaware of what you should be having. So maybe go on 3 or 4, get an average of what they're giving you, and get MyFitnessPal. It's free. It has the biggest directory of foods. You can like scan stuff, and there's a ton of different weights that you can use. So wherever you're tuning in from, you're going to be able to find it. This part of it is really important. You need to be 100% honest and accountable. I've got friends, tons of PTs, and their clients paying them are lying to them about having like pizzas, and then they're like, oh, why haven't I lost any weight? If you're like truly trying to like make a change, you need to be honest here. And this means accounting for absolutely everything. So if you're having some orange juice and you think it's a drink and it doesn't count, it absolutely counts to your daily calories, especially if you're having quite a lot of it. You could easily, if you're going for a litre carton, that's a fair amount of calories. Sauces, really important. Every single thing, bar water, that you're putting in your body, put it into the app. And there's a couple of different ways you can monitor the outcome of this. I'd maybe weigh yourself, take a picture on the first day where you haven't made any changes. 2 weeks later, jump on the scales, maybe have a look in the mirror and see what has happened. Have you dropped some weight? Therefore, this amount of calories that you was having is a deficit of some magnitude. Have you stayed exactly the same, in which case the maintenance calories was correct? Or have you put weight on and then the calories that you were given was a surplus? And then essentially, it's what's your goal, and then you can make the decision moving forward. If you did get the correct maintenance and you want to lose weight, then maybe there's many ways in which you could do this. Maybe take a few hundred calories off and add in some exercise. If you're trying to gain more calories, then you just do the opposite. And if you want to stay the same, just being conscious. And I've heard a lot of stuff around this as getting people into what's the right word, like bad eating habits and stuff like this, where they feel, oh, I can't eat anything. And I'd say that could be a valid point to some extent, but I would probably argue that not being accountable is probably worse, especially if you're, in absence of that, you're becoming overweight and having unhealthy foods. Similar to like if you just don't track your finances at all and you're just getting a whole bunch of stuff, I'll probably argue it's better to be on top of it than not on top of it. So I hope I've answered that well. I know I've gone on a bit, but that's probably the first process that I'd go through for at least the first 2 weeks to a month before you make a big change with a goal in mind.
I like the parallel with the finances because you're right. You know, there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word sensitivity out there because it's not that people are sensitive, but this is a subject that can cut close to the bone, isn't it? It is a subject that can make people feel bad. And the parallel with the finances is good in a way because you're right. Better if you believe you have an issue, better to be aware of the issue in the in a reasonable resolution so you can look to solve it. And there's no place that we would ever have where we would try and have a conversation like this and demonize or to put pressure on anyone in any way. And the big part of this is everywhere you look when you're trying to find information seems to kind of underhand on the sly try and put you down a bit. Do you know what I mean? And usually when someone's trying to put you down, whether that's magazines and videos or health kicks or protein bars or whatever, it's usually to try and get your mind into a state to convince you have an issue to sell you something. And that's what's fun about this conversation. You're not trying to sell anything. And like you say, even apps or whatever that you download, they're all free. You haven't got to spend a penny on anything. And as I go through my journey of trying to get as much value out of your head onto record, I got to ask you what you meant by if someone was overweight. So if I throw back to a point where I had a lot more fat on me, but I was much heavier, you're saying that when someone's heavier, they have a higher calorie maintenance?
Yeah, so the analogy that I like to use for this, because if someone is overweight, the reason that they're not losing weight is because they're maintaining the said weight. So I would think of this as like, maybe at the moment a pickup truck requires a certain amount of petrol, and you want to be a saloon. That they have two different maintenances, and if you're continuing to, you're never going to go down to that saloon car if you're always filling yourself up as the pickup truck. And that probably plays into when you have a deficit, especially if you're overweight. People often think that, okay, this diet has stopped working all of a sudden, calories in, calories out doesn't work. But say your maintenance, if you're overweight, is 4,000 and you go down to 3,500. After a certain point, you will stop losing weight because 3,500 is your new maintenance. So if you want to continue losing weight, you would then need to make a new deficit off of your new maintenance.
I understand. I'm with you. Your body recalibrates to the maintenance calorie input. So then what if you had loads of muscle under there? Or what if you were quite muscular anyway? Does every pound of muscle or every kilogram of muscle on your body increase your maintenance calories just by default, just by being there?
Yes.
It does.
So it's, yeah, and more so than fat, because it works. So it has its own output. So if you are someone who is skinny or just going to the gym in general, you've got a goal to put on a certain amount of muscle, you're going to be getting in the protein, you're probably going to eat in a slight surplus, and then you're putting this weight on, If you don't match the increase of your weight by a new maintenance, then you're going to stagnate in putting weight on to the same extent as someone doing the opposite of you trying to lose weight. If they don't keep following it to their new maintenance, the goal will plateau.
Okay, in the name of no stupid questions, can your body ever turn protein into fat?
No. I don't think so. I think I've watched a few videos on this, and I'm probably going to get rinsed if some scientist is watching this and say, yeah, you can. But as far as I'm aware, okay, so fat can be stored as an energy source. It requires energy to make muscle, so protein, energy, and I think there's one other, it might be like oxygen or something like that, water. And so if you, in theory, if you're really overweight, you're in a deficit, you're breaking down all of this stored energy, which is fat, you're breaking that down, some of that energy goes towards the building of muscle. Okay, indirectly, as far as I understand, indirectly you could have an argument for yes, but as far as like, I've got fat, I'm not going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go to the gym, whatever it's going to be, I don't think you can directly turn fat into muscle.
Okay, and then the only way to build muscle is by eating protein. So muscles can only build from having protein in your blood.
So you'll need a stimulus or of some sort. So some resistance training, or if you play a sport which you're using those muscles regularly enough, your body's gonna need to make an adaptation for that. And then you would need a certain amount of protein to not only do the everyday regeneration and repairing of all your cells and all of that kind of stuff. You need to have additional amounts for the muscle growth as well.
All right, so here's a hypothesis. Let's say that we now understand when you eat protein, a proportion of, say, 20 to 30% roughly, depending on the person, is used. We get that now. So that's kind of an effective food to eat, right? And that is going to be the, I guess, base ingredient that our body needs to have if we're going to build and repair muscle from working out. So what if someone said that therefore means that fat is bad because there's no real use for fat? You eat fat, it gets laid down in your body, just don't eat any fat.
I think anyone who demonizes any of the macros, I'd probably be safe by saying that's a red flag. If anyone's going to demonize these food groups that exist, then they've probably got an ulterior motive. Fat and carbs are just a source of energy, and whilst you need fat for some of your bodily processes, I know they're very useful with hormones and stuff like that. I know they help with joints, and there's a bunch of different things that fats are great for. Past having that, which is going to be optimal, it's kind of just what you decide. Like, do you function better off of having more carbs, or do you function better off of having more fats? It's something that you've got to kind of go through that process of, let's just test it out and see what data our body is giving us back. Maybe if you have half a potato and the whole rest of it is these fatty stuff, maybe you feel a little bit groggy, and then vice versa. So I'll definitely say test it out and find what works for you, but I just wouldn't go down that route of fats are bad or carbs are bad. They've all got their place based on what you're doing.
And what about these kind of over-processed trans fats and things like that we all hear about? Is there much of a difference to you, or? Yes.
So, again, not a scientist, but I have looked into this quite a lot because I am someone that I feel that I function better with a certain amount of fat in my diet, and there's a lot of this. I think it's from the 70s where they were very much peddling fats are bad, and we got told saturated fats are bad because they clog up the arteries. Again, from what I've looked into, don't make any lifestyle changes off of this, look into it yourself, but from what I understand, this is a correlation from having saturated fats with simple carbohydrates, and that is what's clogging the arteries. But to answer your question, from what I've looked at, trans fats are bad. And all of these processed sort of stuff is bad as well. So there's certain oils that aren't great. There's certain oils that if you cook with them at certain temperatures, they produce different things. I'm not sure exactly what the word is.
Kind of output chemicals or something. Well,
yeah,
I was going to say, similar to the camera thing with the pasta, I always imagine that if you're going to go and get an avocado off a tree and eat it, the fat that is in that, or a fish that you yank out the ocean, those omega-3s or whatever, those fats must be very different to the types of fats made in big industrial vats under extremely high pressure where they're like forcing emulsified ingredients together. So that at least makes sense to me.
You've probably heard me say this a million times, but if you think about things of, we've evolved over all of this time, like 100,000 years. So our processes have evolved to have natural stuff. Anything that's come up in the last 50 to 100 years, our body is not adapted for that. So if you kind of use that as a baseline of common sense for kind of what you're putting into your body, completely the same thing with devices. We have never had these like higher output of light devices that people have their heads buried in all day to the second they go to sleep. So we're not evolved for that. And when we put something completely new into our environment, it's not going to change overnight. We can't make those adaptations. I mean, the human body is pretty magnificent in what it can deal with. Like, people are literally like drinking every day and putting poison in themselves, and the fact that they can function for so long is incredible, really, that we can like regenerate our livers and all of that kind of stuff. But if you can't kill it or pick it off a tree or get it out the sea, in general, like, it's probably not the best thing. But go and look into it if it's not.
I have no idea whether this is true or not, but it figures, and maybe you can tell me if it is. But I was once told that if you think about, like you say, the last couple of 100,000 years in modern dietary developments in humans, that scales back probably to millions of years in real like biological evolution too. I feel like this might have been my mum who told me this, or it could have been you for all I know. They were saying that humans, when they hunt, they've been slowly biologically wired to be like kill animal, tear animal apart, like find fats, and fats being one of the big dopamine releasing things in your brain to go, oh my God, we found fat, like eat this all day long. And then there's other things which are the more, I guess, like you say, simple carbs, the sugars. You know, you find some berries on a tree or whatever, you go and find them, you climb it, you pick it, and you go, oh my God, sugar, amazing. And in your natural environment as a developing human, you would very rarely, if not never, live your life where you would eat berries at the same time that you've like killed a fresh animal. So like the idea that simple carbs and fats don't really hit your brain at the same time, because you almost get like double dopamine. Do you know what I mean? And it's like cheesecake. That's why cheesecake exists, because if you get sugar and you mix 50% of it with like 50% fat, your brain just can't hack it. And your monkey brain from millions of years ago just goes nuts. It's like, this is the best thing ever. Get me more cheesecake. I will murder for cheesecake.
And that's hit the nail on the head, really. You think of all the most attractive foods to us is exactly what you're saying there. It's a mix between fat and sugar. And that's essentially our survival instinct. There's nothing wrong with us for wanting these foods. We are incentivized by survival to, you come across something and you recognize that it's higher calorie, then get as much as possible of that in you, because you don't know when you're going to find your next meal. You don't know how long you're going to have to hunt it for. So we are evolved for that, and that's something that we, in this modern world, we have to contend with, because it's difficult. And I think that's one of the key thing for everyone to understand, especially when they're having kind of like stuff like social media with everyone with a six-pack and the perfect body. Tell them certain stuff. It is difficult. It's not easy for everyone. You're seeing the top like 0.01% of people in the entire world, and
it's normalised as if that's just standard, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think. Sorry, go on.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I've already forgotten.
Fair. Well, I feel like you're right, and that standardization is damaging. And, you know, what would you say to, let's be honest, Mark a few years ago? So I'm not talking about this really from a third person, but what would you say to those of us who get home on a Tuesday and they're like, look, I'm knackered. I've had a long day at work. You know, I've got to look after the kids, whatever. And that little evolutionary monkey brain is just too much and I can't overcome it. And I'm just going to eat cheesecake every day. And I have been eating cheesecake every day for months, if not years. And there's no hope for me because that is an instinct that is powerful and life is hard. And how do we get out of this? Like, what is the root cause issue? Like, how do we even get on the first step of the ladder when you just don't want to?
So firstly, I think come from a place of there is hope for everyone. I don't think anyone is hopeless. I think food is a comfort, it's a instant gratification, it's stimulation. So maybe I would look at why you're turning to that as opposed to maybe other more purposeful or fulfilling things. Maybe you might be tired, maybe like just light some candles and jump in the bath and like decompress. Find these other activities, maybe read a book. It is difficult. Maybe you can find some other foods which you equally like as much. Like I you know this, I love cake more than anything, but I also love fruit. Maybe switch out instead of having cheesecake every single night. And I do believe if you have cheesecake every single night, you're gonna get numb to that after a while. And
nope.
so I
every day, every day,
every day. Yeah, no. But find something you can replace it with that you recognise is better for you, because we can say in one breath it's difficult. I totally agree with that. And then on the other hand, there is a point where you need to take accountability and have some element of discipline. And that doesn't mean that you've got to get the willpower up to 1,000,000% and it's like, well, I can never eat a piece of cheesecake again. But maybe it's like, have some cheesecake 2 or 3 nights of the week and don't on the other ones. Like, start to make those reasonable changes that doesn't feel like you're losing out on the things that you enjoy. That's important. But also, if you are placing so much importance on something like having cheesecake to the point where you recognise that it's not good for you, like it's an unhealthy addiction, then you need to start probably treating it somewhat as an addiction. And then that comes back down to, right, why am I turning to this? Why is it making me feel comfortable? Why am I feeling uncomfortable when I'm not having it? Then you get into more like deeper questions. But
that's a great question. Why am I feeling uncomfortable when I'm not having it? Shit. Yeah, that's deep. I think for a lot of people, it's nothing about the food. It's the dopamine response. It's the coping mechanism, escapism. For me, it could be just getting the Netflix on, and it's almost like habitual. Get some kind of binge series on, and if you're not snacking and eating something, it just doesn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? And I think that habitual escapism in certain periods of my life, on reflection, you're absolutely right. It's the question is, why do I feel uncomfortable not having it? That's a great nugget. I think if people thought about that deeply enough, they'd it's going to be different answers for different people, but we have like a feedback loop, and what you're talking about with the dopamine, we're after that easiest way to get the dopamine. And when you know that it's easy access and you get it enough, that becomes the norm. So that's kind of where that suffering, uncomfortable feeling comes in. It's like if we try to do maybe a few days without picking up our phone outside of work, so maybe on a weekend, or you're going to feel a little bit strange when you go to pick your phone up and then it was right there for me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not addicted to my phone at all, but everyone is so normal to have it there on the bedside. Pick it up first thing in the morning, check the emails, check your WhatsApp. So when you don't have it there, it feels strange. And any
I've said this a few times to you, but any decision that you make in the moment for instant gratification, dopamine, stimulation that you don't have to work for, at a later date, you're going to have to pay the bill. Because it doesn't come that easy. Everything comes at a price. So when you are feeling bored because you haven't got your phone, that's you paying the bill. When you feel hungry and your stomach's willing you to eat some food because you're in a deficit and you're trying to lose some weight, yeah, it is going to be tough. It's not easy. If you've gone your whole life eating a certain amount of stuff and that's what you're used to, the first period where you're getting into that habit, it's going to be tough. And that's essentially what you've got to break through. It's like stopping any addiction. You're going to have withdrawals.
Do you remember when I wanted to buy the thing?
Yes.
So Jordan changed my life with this little nugget. And isn't it funny how I managed to finally get in control of my weight after you did this? So here's the story, right? I wanted to buy a thing, and what it was doesn't matter. But all of us have got a thing that they want to buy. Maybe it's a luxury thing or some clothes, some shoes or whatever. There's stuff we buy. And for me, I wanted to buy it, and me and Jordan were talking about it. And Jordan kind of said, why do you want to buy it? Is it because you really need it, just because you want it, or is it like a bit of a dopamine hit? And in the conversation, similar to the food and the cheesecake thing, I think you and I both know there was an element of realization that, no, of course I didn't need this thing. I just wanted it to feel good. That was it. That's why we buy stuff a lot of the time. And you said to me, if you really want it, that's cool. Have it. But don't get it just because you happen to be able to afford it. Set a goal that you actually think's challenging. Like, not overly challenging, just something that's reasonable that you feel you could hit in, say, like a month. And if you hit the goal, then do the thing. And I thought, well, that's an interesting experiment for us all. Because we are all used to having the cheesecake, you know? Go to shop, buy cheesecake, eat cheesecake. Like you say, easy dopamine release. For some of us, it's go and buying something that we think is going to make us feel good because some company advertised it well enough to make us feel shit enough to want to buy the thing. And how fascinating that when I attacked that goal, when I reached it, I just didn't want the thing anymore. And I feel like this was a real turning point for me. And I thank you for the way you phrased it. And I hope that story resonates and lands with people, because it is interesting when you change your relationship to audit why you want things, or at least audit why you think you want things. Sometimes the answer's different, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think like impulse in the moment for anything, good or bad. I always say this when people like have a problem that they think is the end of the world. How many of those have you had? If you're that type of person, like how many of those have you had? Look back on those. You probably can't even remember them. The one that was the biggest problem in the world right now, you're not going to remember in a month's time. And that's similar to the cake. That's similar to buying those things. Like 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes really, like when I've really thought about this, like 5 minutes after you've had the cake, like, and you've had a drink of water and the taste is gone, you no longer have had a cake. Like the problems that have happened, you've no longer had it. Like the enjoyment you've had from buying all this stuff, like there's so much stuff in, well, storage back home, but there's so much stuff that I've been so excited and amazed about to like finally buy, and like now it's just something in a room somewhere and it's past, similar to the thing with the problems. And I know we've all got problems with materialism because of marketing and all of that kind of stuff, but it has a very similar parallel to food. And I think with what you're saying about the thing, if you are going to do it, I think a really good tool for making it worth it and not having it pegged to impulse is peg it to a memory, because I feel like that's a great thing to go through life, building these great memories. And if you say you buy something because of a memory, because of like a landmark moment in your life, then you're going to have a sentimental, real memory and feeling attached to it, as opposed to just like, oh, I really need a new thing. I want to get that dopamine when the package comes through the door. And similar to all of these other addictions, like eating, if you drink every single night, it's just normal. I just like pop open a couple of beers. Whereas if you leave it to an event, if you're someone who drinks, then it makes having the drink special. And I think having that contrast in our lives where I feel like people may find it tough to come to terms, like most of life is about like working towards something and progressing in things that matter. And there are these things that we're super lucky that we have access to that sprinkle them in along for those like extra heightened bits of like stimulation and dopamine, but don't fall into the trap of making it every day, because I think that's where the problems will arise.
Do you think it would be fair to say in this conversation that health, wellness, weight loss, there really isn't a secret to it? It's calories in, calories out, it's maths. But actually, that's not the problem. The problem is the underlying mentality. That's the secret.
Yeah,
There's no secret. It's just it's mentality and underlying issues that all of us have for very good reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to that. Why are you doing it? And because with what you're talking about with the secret, the calories in, the calories out is the secret bit of knowledge. It is actually fairly simple. You limit the amount of calories that you're having, and your goal is to lose weight, then you're going to lose weight. So the hard bit is what you was just saying there, the mentality, getting into that place where you understand that you've got something that you want to change for a good reason, and then getting the help, getting the education, and then applying discipline to carry it out.
Yeah, you're spot on. And one thing you said to me was a complication in this field is that people conflate being healthy with losing weight. Is that? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that you sort of took me through? What did you mean by that?
So you don't need to eat healthy to lose weight by any means. So we was talking about all the processed foods. You could go and eat the worst possible foods possible, but based on the magic, the calories in, calories out. If you're in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. So that's one element to what you're saying, and the other one would be you can eat the best foods like grass-fed and finished and all these organic, natural stuff, but you can put on a lot of weight. It will be tougher to do so because the calories are less dense than processed foods.
What do you mean when you say that? You said that a few times about calories being less dense and being able to eat a bigger, like less dense meal. Just quickly, what do you mean by that?
So in general, whole real foods have less calories than these super processed foods that are like packed with like fats and sugars, as we was talking about. There are exceptions to this rule. Like a very popular one is like trail mix. Like if you're having these natural like berries and nuts, you're going to pack in a lot of calories. But that's a good example of what I was saying. You can eat healthy but put on weight. So I think the right word is they're mutually exclusive. And what I would recommend and suggest for everyone is find a place where your weight goal converges with eating healthy. Because what we were saying earlier about feeling good, feeling sharp and focused, so you're present there for your family, you're high energy enough to want to entertain conversations and give input, go to work and be sharp and focused and feel motivated enough to go and do all of these physical activities and any other hobbies you might want to do. Like, I feel like we should aim to strive instead of just survive. Like, we want to have a great quality of life, and because of the fact of what I was saying earlier, what you put into your body is like what it's working off of. That's a like fundamental element of achieving that, having a great output and feeling good. Who doesn't want to feel good? I feel like all these people going to the doctors and their GPs saying, I feel tired and low energy. I feel like 90% of that could be solved from, right, let's put all this rubbish that you're eating, move a little bit more and eat these better foods, and you're going to feel better. And
that, just going back to the density of calories, you mean that like per gram? So if I just eat, a kilogram of broccoli, obviously the number of calories that can exist per gram or per unit volume of broccoli is going to be considerably less than emulsified pasta. That's what you mean by calorie density?
Yeah, so when you look at the volume of a food, you put them side by side, you can have, and I have done this, you can have an entire piece of lettuce, which in volume is very big. You compare that to 100 grams, which is a full bar of chocolate, very, very different. Now, not only are they different calories, when you're actually consuming that, I know myself anyway, like I can eat a whole bar of chocolate, 100 grams, and probably have 2 or 3 more, I reckon.
Oh yeah, I can get through it.
Yeah, and you could just like, I could get through a day's worth of calories in chocolate very easily. Like, just think about Easter, how much chocolate do you consume very easily, right? I want to, if anyone wants to test this would be cool, but how many full lettuces can you eat?
How many full lettuces? I reckon I could do, what, in just one sitting?
Yeah, just throughout the day, like how many full lettuces could you eat and continue to feel hungry?
Oof. I mean, a lettuce, I feel like if I eat a lettuce, it's just like drinking a bit of water with some leaves in it. So I'm going to go, I reckon I could do like probably 10 lettuces in a day. Across a 24-hour period, I could easily do 10 lettuces.
Do you know what? This is the next video on your podcast. It's not going to be a podcast. It's going to be Mark eats 10 lettuces. 10 lettuces. But okay, so where I'm going with this is, in the evening, I love to snack. I think most people do. It comes to the end of the day, it's more, for most people, easier to be disciplined during the morning. You wake up, you have your coffee, that somewhat suppresses your appetite, you're getting all your stuff ready, you get into work, you do your meeting, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime. So you've got stuff filling that time, and that kind of goes back to earlier when you're saying, I want to have cheesecake every day. Fill your time with stuff that is good, and you'll probably be less focused on eating. But anyway, so a lot of people are a lot more disciplined in the morning. You get to the evening and it's like, right, cool, I've done all my work for the day, I've earned my treat and all of that kind of stuff. You're sitting down maybe in front of the TV or whatever you do, and it's snack time. Like, let's get my treat in for having a great day. And if I go down the route of maybe the chocolate side of it, then I finish my chocolate bar and I'm like, that wasn't very satisfying because I don't feel full because it's small. It takes up a small amount of space in my stomach. So what I'm saying with look to these other options, if you, for example, go and buy your own popcorn kernels and you make this yourself, for the same amount of calories, you are getting a humongous bowl of popcorn. Not only is this going to make you feel more full up, it's going to take you longer to eat it. So that kind of dopamine you're getting from keep eating, that's going off. You're kind of biohacking your brain to say, okay, I need this snack, I'm going to give it to myself, but let's not do it with high fructose corn syrup and something that as soon as I finish it, I'm going to want more. And really, if you're doing something to satisfy yourself, the last thing you want is to feel unsatisfied because you want more after. So it's kind of counterintuitive anyway. So, but that's just one example of something like I've implemented in my life to try and tackle that want.
I love that trick. So popcorn's a secret. So you're saying in this conflation of health and weight loss, which you want to avoid, I think I understand that. in a way, even though I'm not suggesting we do this, in a way you're saying I could actually just eat cheesecake, and as long as I exercised enough, I could still lose weight. I'll just feel grim.
Yeah, you don't even need to exercise if you're in a deficit. I think it'd be very difficult to be in a deficit just eating cheesecake, because that's a dense food, so you'd feel your stomach would want more food. But in theory, if you could achieve eating under your maintenance with just cheesecake, you would lose weight.
I love that. But probably my brain wouldn't work and my guts would be full of cheese.
Yeah.
As we think about rounding up this first episode, because I know we have plans to do others in the future, and it's a deep topic. But what I love about this conversation is just going a little bit superficially over the basics, because I think the basics are often what's missing. And some of the nuggets that you've shared with us today have really been amazing, and I really sort of thank you for that. And as this dynamic develops in the years to come, I appreciate this is going to be a hard question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just to get your initial thoughts, your gut instincts, pardon the pun. What do you think about these drugs like Ozempic and these sort of weight loss drugs where pharma companies are turning around saying, eat the cheesecake, like eat the KFC, don't worry about what George's saying, just have this injection and you lose weight. And it seems to be working, by the way. Like, what's your opinion on this developing field?
Well, the first time I heard about the Ozempic, I was like, for me personally, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard of. But all jokes aside, going back to what I was saying with the use common sense based on that whole, the natural thing, I feel like something that is having that much of a overriding effect on your system, just a gut feeling, because again, I have no idea, but I feel like it's not going to be good, and even if it is on a like biological level, I think in the mind, having something, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right anywhere for me.
I'm petrified of it.
Yeah, and it's not because I want people to go through like, oh, don't have this thing that's going to make it better for you. I don't want people to struggle for the sake of struggling. It is because I can't see it being a good thing. I think it'll be good in a very small amount of cases where people are like massively overweight and it's kind of like before surgery, otherwise you're going to die. Maybe those situations, probably it's like any intervention at that point is going to be better than no intervention. But for the vast majority of people that just want to eat another bit of carrot cake, I can't see it being a good addition to people's everyday lives, like the phone, even though it is beneficial.
Well, the reason why it freaks me out is because the pasta example of how your gut absorbs things, breaks things down, the way you speak about your body's synthesizing processes of like protein, and I know we've gone through the basics, but these are really complicated processes, right? Your body's hormones essentially dictate everything about how you function, and you know, the synapses of your brain, the dopamine itself that hits your brain is all made in the gut. And the reason why Ozempic kind of freaks me out is I acknowledge that there must be a massive benefit in reducing the comorbidity of obesity, for example. I definitely get that, right? And I get that it's a drug that's developed for diabetes. And this is why I want to get like a doctor who specializes in this stuff on the show and talk more about it. Because what I worry about, it's like when a big pharmaceutical company comes along and goes, don't worry about like eating healthy and none of that stuff. Just crack on and have this drug and it will be fine. There's something that goes, you are not solving the root cause. You're putting like a plaster on a bullet wound. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you're putting bad stuff in your body, it's not that the bad stuff in your body just might be happening to make you put weight on. The bad stuff in your body is causing all sorts of other like inflammations, issues, potentially cancers. And to assume that there is an injection that just magics that all away, I don't know. It freaks me out. So I'm looking forward to going into that subject deeper. So it's interesting to get your instinct on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think most people, given something like that, what are they going to use it to eat more of? Are they going to use it to eat more
Broccoli.
of those healthy foods? Exactly. Or are they going to be, yes, now I can eat 20 carrot cakes a day and not put any weight on? You know exactly what people are going to choose. And I think it could be a problem for kind of society, really, because people are going to be pushed down more that route, maybe. That's what I would think. And then again, apart with being the sharp and focused and high energy, it's like, who's going to suffer as a result of that? Is it going to be the families who can't be bothered to like have a conversation because they're all strung out on carrot cake, or like you've got employers like walking into the office and they're doing as minimal as possible because they just don't feel like it, they've got a groggy brain? And I don't know where the Ozempic works on the body, but we don't just absorb it in the gut. I mean, if we're having all these glutens and it's like breaking down the intestinal barrier and we're getting a leaky gut, then okay, you might be having all this food, but it might be getting into the brain. And I don't know, I think it poses more problems than it solves for the majority of people. But totally agree that anyone who's in a critical position, then it'll probably be a good addition.
Well, look, in summary, and thanks again for taking the time to do this, and we'll jump on again in the future. But if you were to leave people with your kind of final bits of advice, as challenging as this is, people who are interested in making a change, losing a bit of weight, like getting themselves healthier, what would you leave them with?
I would start with what you want from life. So take away the food. Don't think about the food for a moment. Like, how do you want to go through the world? Do you want to go through it feeling good? Do you want to go through it feeling great? Do you want to go through it feeling exceptional? Like, what do you want to achieve in your relationships, in your work? I think if most people, if they take away the food part of that, they would probably say, yeah, I want to have a great, fulfilling life. And that answers the question for me when you start asking about food. If I want this from my life, now I need to backwards engineer it and work out how I feel like this and how I'm going to be focused and sharp, and I'm not going to be like needing a cheesecake every single night just so I feel good. Is that the place that you want to like live in? Is that how you want to go through life? Probably not. I'd think for most people, like they want to be present and enjoy the real stuff. I think as well, like, you do need to have some accountability and discipline. I fully recognise that everyone has got their own barriers and their own excuses, which all have varying validities. But there becomes a point where you need to take a stance and make a change. Otherwise, you'll just go through your life the way you currently are. So make that change, and maybe, if not only for yourself, like you have kids, Mark, I'm sure you want to be like active and running about in decades to come with your kids and like being high energy. And I think it's the right thing to do as well, for that example as well. But I just think it's a no-brainer if you look at the result and the goal of what it's going to give you, if that makes sense. So I think that takes care of like the mindset and why we should do it on like a philosophical level or whatever. And when it comes to the food, I think there's, obviously we went through it earlier on, how you can kind of start to look into this and begin the process of either losing weight or gaining weight, two equal problems that people have. And I would probably leave it there as kind of like a foundational start point. Start looking into it yourself, make your own decisions, critically think, don't take like marketing from these massive corporations. When there's money to be made, there's always some kind of spin on the truth. So yeah, I think that's a good place to end it on my end.
It's a beautiful place to round up the episode. Thank you so much for doing this, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Take care.